Hello everybody and welcome to the market structure section of the course. In this section we're going to be going all over the market structure, and we're going to be going over understanding what market structure is and everything to do with it, right? So in this session we're going to be going over highs and lows and understanding basic market structure, right? So let's begin. Now, market structure is made of highs and lows. When price is either bullish, when price is following a trend, it is either bullish or bearish structure. Bullish structure is the creation of higher highs followed by higher lows. Bearish structure is the creation of lower lows followed by lower highs, and so on and so forth, right? It's just repeating structure of higher lows, lower lows and lower highs, and the same thing goes for bullish structure. The movement of price is called price action, right? So now let's begin with the diagram just to explain exactly what's going on here. So if let's just say this is price, right? This is just, price, and let's just imagine that this is a forex chart and we are looking at it, right? So if we just begin with some basic price action, and then right now we are here, this point in price is called a high. Why is it called a high? It's called a high because it is the point at which, before price shot down, it is the highest point, right? Or just it is a high point, right? So let's just say, for example, here, this area would be a low. Why? Because this is the previous lowest point of price, right? Before it came back up and then went back down, right? So let me just explain the high one more time. So this is a high. Why is it high? Firstly, because it is the point at which, right? Let's just imagine, for example, here, this is a high. Why? Because it's the point at which it was the previous highest point at which price was at before it went down, and from over here, right? So if that's unclear, it will be more clear on the actual charts. I'm just trying to use this diagram to explain exactly what bullish and bearish structure looks like. So now we have established that this is a high, but it is a specific high because if we take into account what kind of high this is, because there are two types of highs. There are lower highs and there are higher highs, right? And so this is a higher high. Why is it a higher high? Because the previous high, for example over here, this high over here is higher in price than it, right? So price is higher here than it was over here, right? And so that's exactly why it's a higher high. Now, this isn't that important because this is bearish structure. So we will just call this a high for now, right? And then we are followed by this, which is a low, right? And then the importance of this is that this low is lower than that low, right? It is lower down in price. Let's say, for example, this low over here was, 1.15 in price. This low over here could be 1.05, right? So we have gone down in price compared to the previous low, right? So what do we call this? We call this a lower low. And then over here, what do we call this? We call this a lower high. Why do we call this a lower high? Because this high is at a higher price than this high, right? So this high over here is lower in price than this high, so we call this a lower high, right? So let's just imagine this is 1.3 in price. This high could be 1.2, right? And so that is exactly why it's a lower high. Now let's continue with this. This is another lower low. This is another lower high. This is another lower low, assuming that price went like this, right? And then that's another lower high, and so on and so forth, right? Now this is what we call bearish structure, and I'll just quickly write here bearish, right? Because this is bearish price. So this is just a simple diagram, an example of what bearish structure looks like. Now let's move on to bullish structure. So I'll just quickly write over here bullish structure, right? And so now let's move on to bullish structure. So let's say this is just price action here. Let's just say this was a low, right? Let me just get rid of this. Let's just say this is a low. Following this, we have a high, right? But what kind of high is this? This is a higher high. Why is this a higher high? Because first of all, we've got this high over here, right? Now this high over here is higher in price compared to this high, right? It has broken this previous structure, right? And that's something I didn't mention over here. Let me just quickly mention that. So this low over here has broken previous structure, and again this low over here has broken this previous structure, and again this low over here has broken this previous structure, right? And yeah, so if we continue with this high has broken previous structure, right? And so on and so forth. So yeah, so this makes this a higher high, and again another higher high. Now let's look at the lows, and then again another higher high, because yet again this point in price is higher than this point in price, right? And it is a high, so we call it a higher high. Let's just say this is 1.3. At this point we could be at 1.4, right? And so those are the highs. So in a bullish market, if we're going up, we're looking at higher highs being created. Now let's look at higher lows. So at this point we're looking at a higher low. What exactly is this? This low over here is higher in price than that low over there. So this could be so this point could be 1.0, and then this could be 1.1, for example, right? And then this could be another higher low. This is another higher low. Why? Because price is this is another low, but is higher in price than this low over here, right? And so this could be 1.2, for example. And then again, this could be this is another higher low, and then this could be 1.3, for example, right? And that is just the simple idea of structure. So now let's move on to some charts to further explain exactly what's going on here. So if I just move on to this, now let's take a look at what bearish structure looks like on a chart. So this would just be our high, right? That is just our high in price. So we will use a highlights tool. So we'll call this our high, right? In fact, let me just use this tool instead. So this is our high. Okay, so I can't draw text. So we'll just call this our high, right? But the more important thing is that following this we have a low, right? Now, following this, what do we have, right? Let me just get this tool. This point here is a higher low, right? Why? Because over here, I meant to say lower high, right? At this point, we have a lower high. Why? Because first of all, this high over here, right? Let's just say it is at 0.93679. So if you look over here, we're at 0.937, let's just say, right? And at this point, we're at 0.931. So we have clearly decreased in price, and it is another high, right? So this point is a high. These points are both highs, but this point can be described as a lower high in comparison to this point over here, right? And then again, what do we have? Another lower high, right? And then what can we say? Again, over here, another lower high, right? Over here. And then again, what do we have? Another lower high, right? And now let's take a look at the lows. So over here, what do we have? We've got a lower low, right? And then again, what do we have? A lower low over here. And then again, a lower low. And now we are forming another lower low over here. Well, it hasn't been formed yet, but we can just assume because price has broken through, we are going to form a lower low, right? And then let me just mark all of these out. Let me do that. Right, and then again, lower low. And then eventually we'll create another one. So this is what bearish structure looks like, and I hope that makes sense because yeah, so that's what bearish structure looks like. We are always looking at lower points in the market, lower lows, lower highs, right? And some of you may be wondering, so what are all of these points over here? This is just this is like lower time frame price structure, right? Because if I go back to this paint section, right, within all of this, there is lower time frame structure, which looks way more different to what we can see here, right? So price may have gone up for just a bit, right, created a higher high, but overall price is then going to come back down and create more bearish structure, right? So this is on a higher time frame. Let's just say this is the 4 hour. On the 1 hour, or let's just say on the 15-minute over here, we would be seeing price moving very, very sharply in bearish structure, overall bearish structure. So let me just show you what that looks like. Actually, I'll dedicate a specific episode to this, right? So now let's move on to bullish structure. So let's just say this is our first low, right? Over here, this is our low, and then what is it followed by? A higher low, right? And so we're gonna mark out all of the higher lows to begin with, right? Higher low, right? And so now we've got another higher low, and then we've got another one over here, right? Or we could say we have another one over here, and then another one over here. It's your choice whether you want to mark out all of them. And then we've got another one over here, another one here, and then we've actually got equal lows over here, but it's relatively higher than that one, right? And so if we just highlight all of these, right, we've got another one here, and again here, and again there, and there, right? So those are all of our high lows, right? This low, right? So okay, let's just think about this low over here, right? Where is it in price? 1.18, and then we have this low 1.186, right? And then we have this low 1.19. We are clearly increasing, but these are still all lows. Now let's look at the upside, right? So let's just say not to make this messy, let's just say we've got our high over here, right? This would just be our high. Then following, well, we could actually call this a higher high. Why? Because it is higher than this previous high over here. And then we've got over here another higher high, right? And so if I just mark out all of our higher highs, right? And that is our bullish structure. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that although it may look like bullish structure from where you're looking at it from, price may also give a different direction based off the higher time frame, and that's what we're going to go over in the next section. So in the next session. So just to recap, what do we have here? We've got a higher high followed by another higher high followed by another one and another one and another one. This is clearly bullish structure. Why? Because we are increasing in price over time. And if you guys want to see this in a trend line, for example, this would be our trend line. We are in an uptrend, right? And the same thing goes for over here. We are clearly in a downtrend, right? And so that's exactly what market structure looks like. Hope you guys found this educational, and I'll see you guys in the next section.